Hello, welcome back to Elevate Ordinary. I'm your host, JonMarc Grodi.
I'm Teresa Grodi.
And we're back with another extraordinary conversation about the ordinary pursuit of truth, goodness, and beauty. Thanks for being with us again for this conversation here on the show, talking about, all the little ways, the little ordinary things that God's sending to us through which we are to be the saints that He's called us to be. We're to grow in virtue. We're to build treasure in heaven. And it's not through the big things out there in the real world, the mythical real world someplace. It's here in our families, in our marriages, in our homes, and in our home schools, if that's something that you do, you're mine too. That's what we've been talking the last couple episodes about homeschooling, not giving you the definitive homeschooling one-on-one, how to do it, what it is, why you should do it. No, that's not really what our conversation has been about. It's just about our journey, our thought process, kind of how we worked through it, how we came to it, what our experiences have been. And if there's any takeaways we want you to take away from it, it's just to be empowered that you could do this if you thought it was best for your children, and you are capable and competent to make that evaluation and to make that decision for your family. It's part of your right and responsibility as a parent. And we want you to be empowered to know that you could do it, you can do it. And even if you are sending your kids to school, you can do it in little ways around that. Because again, you are the primary educator of your children. No one in the world knows your children like you do. You got this. You got this. I got this. So we've talked a couple episodes now. The first episode, we kind of shared a snapshot of what we're doing now. And again, it changes year to year, but we gave you a snapshot on what kind of our life looks like right now, in case that was helpful to you. We also talked a little bit about our backgrounds, our educations, kind of what, our baggage, positive and negative going into our family life and our journey to homeschooling. Second episode, we talked through some of the mindset stuff with homeschooling, really kind of three main points: learning your children, learning yourself and learning your environment
in general,
kind of your home, your family culture.
So thinking through that as we do.
And so what are we talking about this third and final?
This final one, we solicited some questions for Q&A. We'll get to at the very end. But first of all, we're going to set up our actual practicals and advice. So this is, now we're out of the theoretical maybe. You know us. We'll probably get into that. But into some practical things that we have put together. Based on our, 10 years doing this. And
let me make a comment about the practicals. Again, one of the reasons that we focus on virtue in this show is because virtues, principles for understanding human behavior and how we ought to act, they're really valuable for translating from one life to another life, right? When we look at the life of our Lord Jesus Christ or of His great saints, imitating them is never as simple as just doing externally what they did. In other words, like dressing like Jesus and wearing sandals and going on dusty roads. Like, that's not what it means to imitate Jesus. What it means is to understand the way He thought, the qualities of His heart and mind, His virtues. That's what we're talking about. So too with the saints. And so when we're not setting ourselves up as saints here, but when we talk about practicals, even amongst them, we're the point isn't that the point is not that you might replicate these in your life. It's that you might pick and choose things that are helpful to you, but more importantly, recognize the principles behind them so that you can take those and think them through and talk them through with your own spouse and discover how to implement them, instantiate them in your life in the way that makes sense to you.
Yeah, this is how you become an adult in the Catholic Church, and this is how you become valuable to the church. Now, obviously, everyone has their own dignity and value no matter what we do, but we can really become parish builders and kingdom builders when we learn how to become saints in our own day and age and situation and relationships.
Yeah.
And again, not a saint. I've got 6 children at home. Well, maybe 5. The baby likes me. Who would tell you. Actually, she started hitting me the other day. But that would tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
But this is my struggle to become a saint, right?
Yeah. No one can
now.
Right.
And this is my adulthood. This is how I'm being magnanimity.
Yeah.
How I'm looking at what God has called me to, and I'm trying really hard not to shirk away from it.
Right.
Or choose something else.
Turn toward it, embrace it. But also shoulder the responsibility of being the thinker, the decision maker, the creator, the free actor in the life that God's given you. No one can do it but you, but we can help encourage each other along the way. So that's what we're doing here.
Awesome. And we mentioned this in the other 2 episodes. I just want to mention it again, kind of housekeeping. If you want what we think is probably the best 2 hours you will spend learning about homeschooling, we recommend this podcast. It's called The Secrets of Joe Schooling by Jennifer Fulwiler. Jennifer Fulwiler is a comedian. She homeschooled 6 kids. This is hilarious. It's entertaining, and they're very rational and good thinkers, thinking from the heart of the church. So we recommend that podcast.
Really cool.
Before ours. This is us thinking out loud and conversing. Right. Okay, so practicals and advice. We went over these a little bit in the other episodes, but these are just kind of recaps. Again, practicals. Okay, so the first thing I have here, I'm reading off my notes. JonMarc is going to riff. So these may be good, these may be bad. Okay. So number 1, set clear mountaintop goals for your children with your faith and your spouse. Okay, so you and your spouse and your faith. Set the clear mountaintop goals for your children. Keep those short and simple and call them to mind constantly. I wrote down, put them on your wall.
Yes.
Okay. So we went into in the last episode in the section about learning yourself that there are so many fears about how you will ruin your children, even if you don't homeschool them. As soon as you are pregnant, you will fear ruining your child. And the reason why we set these clear mountaintop goals, these real priorities. I want my child to be resilient. I want them to be virtuous. I want them to be a saint. I want them to love me. I want them to feel joy in our relationship. Set those goals up high, agree on them with your spouse in your rational mind, and call them always to mind. A great book to help you do this. This is not specifically about homeschooling, but this helps couples walk through what's important in their own marriage. So this is not a book that tells you cookie cutter what to do about someone else's marriage. This is you walking through with your spouse. It's called 3 Big Questions for Frantic Families. It will take you less than 2 days to read. If you're a quick reader like JonMarc, it'll take you a couple hours. So anyway, all right. Set clear mountaintop goals. JonMarc, you go for that.
Ethan, drop a beat here. I'm going to riff on this a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. But I think it's such an important point here because, and there's a subtlety to this point that may be overlooked. We all get that you need to set goals and that you need to look forward ahead. I think what we underestimate or overestimate. I think our goals are generally they're too short-sighted. They're actually too small. I had this revelation in my own life a couple of years ago that I realized for my entire life, whenever I think of goals of where I'm going to go, I'm a person of many fears, as you said. And when we make our goals within our fears, we always make these goals based on what I already can imagine. Like we only make goals of things that we can already imagine knowing how to do and seeing how we're going to accomplish it. And the problem is, first of all, that doesn't leave any room for trust in God and openness to where he might be calling us, because he might be calling us to something that's very new and different. But it never pushes us to go out beyond our comfort zones. Like I'm only going to make goals that I can already imagine myself doing that are already very comfortable to me. So it never pushes us out beyond that. But also the reality is if we set those things aside for a moment and say, no, what do I really want? What do I really want for my marriage, for my family, for my children? And we're able to think about that unencumbered from our fears and doubts and all that. Then if we get that clear in our mind and then we begin to walk backwards, we actually recognize that, no, we can see how I would proceed in that direction. And it also gives us something very clear to pray for and to trust God with, because we see more clearly where we want to go. And as we work back from that, we actually recognize, no, this is more attainable. I can see the things that are important now that'll lead me there. But if we always are making goals and plans within our fears, within the kind of the prison of our fears, we can never move very far. And so set big goals, like dream big with your spouse. You'll be surprised at what it actually can do for your marriage and family.
Yeah. Totally agree. And the book, 3 Big Questions for Frantic Families.
Great resource, yeah.
By Pat Lencioni will also help you with this number 2. Yeah. Ruthlessly examine what is siphoning time and attention and control away from your family. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we talked a little bit last episode, on part 2, homeschooling, about what systems you're a part of. Okay. Your job system, your school system, your church system. I don't know. No, not church. Let's not lump that in there. But like, what are the systems, okay, that are siphoning your time and your attention and your resources away from you dreaming those big dreams for your big hopes of sainthood and a happy family and a happy marriage? Like, what's pulling those away? But always keep in mind that you can add those things back in.
Yeah, that was a great
You're
point
not
you made,
saying forever goodbye to the school system. Okay. You're saying, I'm going to rightly order this. Mm-hmm. Okay. We're going to step back from this 2-parent working system. Okay. We're going to step back from it. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we're just going to see how this plays out, So, you know what I mean? You can take.
Yeah. Well, and of course, that's a particularly difficult example because if a family gets really, really used to a 2-parent income and a standard of living like that, then it is hard to pull back from that. But with regards to homeschooling, I think it's an easier example of just recognizing that, or maybe you don't recognize this, that you can step away from a school system and extracurriculars and sports and all the kind of stuff. You can step back from those and reevaluate and again get to know your children and your spouse and your family culture. And you can always then dip back into those things that are helpful. But sometimes we get these fears, from our experience of school that, if the kids miss any of this formal school setting, or if they miss any sports or any extracurriculars or any clubs or any badges or any grades, that it's gonna ruin the rest of their life. And the reality is those things they're just not. There are more important things in your kids' lives, and you can step back and focus on the more fundamental things: the prayer, the relationships, the family culture, getting to know your child and where they are in their own journey of education and virtue, and helping them take a step forward. You can step back and focus on those things, and you can always go back. You can always re-enroll or get involved in things, but you need to know that you have the freedom to do that, because so that you're not locked into something that isn't ideal, and maybe you can't evaluate properly just because you're locked into it. Mm-hmm. I guess the way I'd say that.
And I think one of the best ways to do that is like by thought experiments, right? So
I love thought experiments.
Yeah. Just like, okay, say the worst part of my life. Mm-hmm. The worst part of my life is school drop off and pick up. Mm-hmm. Run the thought experiment. There are no thought police who are going to chastise you for thinking about what would happen if I came to the school and said, I'm going to drop my kid off at 5 minutes after every day. Like, what would happen? You can think that thought. Mm-hmm. Okay. What would happen? Can they reasonably say no? I don't know. Mm-hmm. Can they kick your kid out? I don't know. Can they give him tardy every single day and then they have this tardy check mark near?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, will he have to do 2 extra days to add up those 5 minutes at the end of the school year? Well, maybe that's something we'll do. Do you know what I mean? There's no one that's going to hurt you for doing that thought experiment. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sometimes I think we get scared to even allow certain things to come into our brains because we'll get in trouble for them.
Or like you brought up last episode, the example of homework. The idea that kids, many kids go to school 8-9 hours a day, all told, and then have to come home with hours of additional schoolwork.
And their homework should take them 10 minutes, but they're like, their eyes are glazed over and they're just like done because they're 5 and they've spent 8 hours in school.
It's okay to push back against that and see where the boundaries lie. And then once you've discovered the boundaries, decide whether to accept them or to say, again, I can
or
step
I'll
away.
accept the responsibility if my kid isn't excelling in this particular homework, or I'll accept the responsibility as the parent of an F in homework in 2nd grade. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll accept that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, again, no one is going to hurt you for thinking through the process of what if I said no more homework for my kid right now? They just can't handle this. and this is my home time, and we're just not doing this every day.
Right.
Like, you can run that thought experiment without getting in trouble.
You can run that real experiment. Once you run the thought experiment.
Yeah. So like, and this is just like when you ruthlessly, this is the advice, ruthlessly examine what is siphoning time and attention and control away from your family. And feel, like, run the thought experiment of what if the system that this is siphoning my precious hours with my kid after school every day. Like, maybe this is not what we're doing anymore. Yeah. Number 3, focus on learning the child and learning your relationship with them. And we talked about that a ton in the second episode. But yeah, focus on learning your child, even if it means you don't do any formal schooling for a defined amount of time. Go to museums, go to parks, let the kid say, what do you want to do today, kid? We'll follow you today, and just see what happens, and learn the child. And sorry, you go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, one other way to put it is it's putting relationships over systems or over specific expectations about grades or outcomes. And that doesn't mean, like, I want to qualify it a little bit. It doesn't mean, I mean, you made the comment that we've heard and then parroted, in our own family life the other day, that I'm not your friend, kid, right? I'm your parent, right? So to say that you prioritize family relationships over, like, getting through a math curriculum on time or whatever it might be, it's not to say that you're relinquishing your role as a parent and just being a buddy. No, it's not that. Like, there's an important boundary there. A parent to child relationship is different than a buddy relationship, and that's important to maintain. You are there as a mother or father to teach and to guide, but the relationship, recognize the relationship between two free human beings in which you're trying to help that person, that little person, to freely mature and make decisions and take steps forward in their education, in their virtue growth, to prioritize that over the outcomes. Again, this is just a part of life that it's very easy to get too focused on the outcomes, and then to let that cause fear that leads you to not act in a way that actually is leading to those outcomes, right? To get worried about the outcome and then to be impatient in the present moment, rather than say, you know what, I'm going to set aside the outcome. I'm just going to be focused on being present to this person, really listening to them, really empathizing with them, really getting to know them and getting to know what's going to help them take the step forward. That's putting the relationship before the specific educational outcomes. Yeah.
And sometimes too, like, you'll get a real, when you take the kids out of the house, to something that they want to do, the sibling relationships will look a lot different. And you might be able to glean other nuances and strengths and weaknesses and different pairs that you would have never put together. Or even comparing children in a way you wouldn't have compared them before. Yeah. Like, I would have thought this kid would be the first person in the creek getting all muddy, but she was terrified of sticking her foot in the cold water. And this girl, who I would have never guessed, was like, you know what I mean? Like, so you could have had your kids backwards, Right. You're setting up fun events for one that she actually doesn't like, and the other kid feels like they would like, So it's just, focus on learning your child and learning your relationship with them. Number 4, again, these are just totally arbitrary. We're just pulling things out of our homeschooling. Banish being behind, quote unquote, being behind. And we spoke a little bit about that. There's no such thing. Children, so I'm going to take it this direction. Okay. Children learn so fast. They learn so fast. You can probably catch a kid up on almost anything in a single semester. Okay. Now I'm talking about young kids. I'm not saying you can fit all of engineering in, one semester and have a degree or whatever. But if math isn't working right now, take a few months break, grab some living books about math at the library, or let them do cooking or different kinds of problem solving or whatever. But your kid isn't going to be behind. Yeah. If you give a kid, like you were mentioning this in another episode, like if you give a kid a board game, a kid who can read, and say, you figure this out and you teach me, they'll figure it out. Right. So it's like the idea that someone would say, like, if we take a little bit of time off of handwriting, they're going to be behind. And you're like, no, it just takes an afternoon of like,
or if we go through it really
getting
quickly,
it back.
That's another thing, is just recognizing that the reason that material is paced the way it is in a school setting is because they have to make sure that no child is left behind in a school setting. Yeah,
and you're managing 20 to 200 students.
Yeah, one child might, need more time on a certain subject or a certain concept within a subject. And you know what? You can take that time. You can go more slowly. You can back it way up and review. Or with a different child, you can say, you know what? There's no reason to slow down. Yeah, let's just rush through 5 chapters because they're excited about it right now. They're getting it. They're motivated. They're excited. They're feeling confident about it.
Yeah.
Like you can adjust, speed up, slow down the pace based on your child's aptitude and their interest and enthusiasm.
Yeah. A lot of times when I feel like a kid has been excited about a workbook page or a chapter or something, I'll be like, do you want to do another? Like, that was great. Do you want to do another chapter? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll be like, yeah. And we'll do a couple more chapters. Or sometimes they'll be like, not right now. Yeah. And so it's like, fine. That's not letting the kid take the reins. It's like, you're kind of like gauging, if I gave this child the opportunity, would they go further in this?
Right.
Or was what I set just done for the day? We're done.
This is a tangential thing, but I think it relates to this. Again, it's along in this vein of rethinking some of our presumptions about education. But we did another episode about reading, I think at one point, how to read a book, reading.
Rereading.
And one of the things that just blew my mind when it finally occurred to me, again, having read that book by McIntyre, or whoever that was.
How to read a book?
What was the guy's name? One of his points in the book was like, it's okay to skim. Like sometimes we have this presumption, I need to read slowly and methodically and not miss a single thing. And his whole point is, if the book's worth reading, you'll read it again. Skim it the first time. Like, it's okay. Give yourself that permission. And also give yourself permission not to finish a book that you don't think is worthwhile. Mm-hmm. Like, that's okay. You can skim. And so bringing this back to education, the point is, early on when I get my kids reading and I would give them a novel, they'd pick up a novel and they'd be reading through it real fast. And I'm just thinking to myself, I just know they're skimming over things. They're skimming over some of the description of the scenery. And there's a part of me that's poetry. Like, no, you gotta slow down. You don't want to miss a single thing. But recognizing that, no, it's okay. That's part of reading, is the first time you read a great novel, you're following the plot and you're not as patient with all the detailed scenery. But then, you know what? We have books that our kids have now gone back and read over and over because the first time they followed the plot, the second time they were really digging into all the rest of the meat. And so too with education, it's okay to move ahead quickly. You can always go back and review or work on bits that didn't sink in. The point is you can modulate according to your kid's interest and aptitude.
Mm-hmm. Next, we've covered this one previously a few times, but I just want to re-mention it again since it's practical. Ask yourself what you're afraid of. Ask yourself what you're afraid of. When you're sitting at the table and you're having a hard time, ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid that you're not going to finish this in time to get dinner in the crock pot? Well, that's a real fear, but freaking out about it, at this child is not going to get dinner in the crock pot any sooner.
The outcome versus
you could take a breather in 5 minutes, 10 minutes and start dinner, or you could say school's over for the day. If this is really bothering me and I'm not going to be a good teacher, I'd rather just have them read some books right now or work on their foreign language or, some other thing that is not moderated by me, know? So ask yourself what you're afraid of. Push yourself to feel it and name it and share it with your spouse. Like get it out in the light. Just get it out there.
Yeah.
This is next. You are going to give up some things that kids learn in school, and that's okay. Okay, let me give you an example. In my family, that looks like my kids interrupt more. They don't know how to stand in a line. They look like cavemen who have just been thawed out encountering traffic for the first time when they cross the street. That's not because I can't teach these things, okay? It's because these things take repetition and social pressure, okay? A positive social pressure. Yeah. And we can either eat 3 home-cooked meals a day, have clean laundry, and welcome new babies during my fertility years, or we can spend lots of time focusing on social norms, but we can't have both, okay? We can't have a happy mommy lots of healthy, nutritious, home-cooked meals, clean laundry, accepting babies, which we do. We love. I want to accept babies during my entire fertility years, okay? But like, I can't do that. And that's part of learning myself, okay? This is not where I'm going to focus my time. And then again, this is what it looks like in my house. This is what it looks like with my temperament and my flaws, okay? I'm accepting that my kids won't always raise their hand when they want to be heard, okay? I'm accepting that my kids don't know how to brush their hair or wear a uniform every day. I'm okay with that. Like, that is my trade-off, okay? There are so many incredible things that we could not replicate even in the best school that we get at home. And that is my trade-off, okay?
Well, and I think that the broader point there is just the reality of trade-offs. There's always trade-offs. There are going to be significant trade-offs if your kid is in school 8 or 9 hours a day away from your family. There are going to be trade-offs there. It doesn't mean you can't surmount those trade-offs, those setbacks, but they're real. And so too, if you decide to homeschool, there are going to be some trade-offs. Yeah. I mean, some of the socialization in terms of, knowing how to stand in the line and raise your hand, it's going to take a little longer to set in. You're going to have a bit.
And children become self-aware at different ages, and they tend to self-correct that stuff. And especially when they get older, it's easier for you to then self-correct it because they have control over themselves.
Especially again, if you're doing it in the midst of family with lots of siblings around and lots of extended family and friends, like a lot of that then is still going to happen.
Your kids, if you have a lot of siblings, your kids are going to know that they're annoying really quick, right? And you don't even have to even say it as a parent. You don't have to be like, hey, that's very annoying to other people. Yeah. You'll have 4 other siblings telling them that before you even get that sentence out of your mouth. So there are some self-correctings when it comes to the social stuff. Okay. Unschool or deschool for a long time. And we talked about what those things mean in other episodes. For a long time before you choose a curriculum or make a homeschooling room. Okay. So unschooling would be like not having a curriculum and kind of following what you already know are the children's interests. Okay. So it doesn't just mean the kids just do whatever they want all day.
Or that there's no structure.
You could do that
to family life.
It won't last for long, but you could do that. Or deschooling would be like if you're taking a kid out of school and you and them are accustomed to a certain way of looking at education. And during that time, you're just kind of like relaxing and spending time together, doing the fun things. Maybe you go to Cedar Point, maybe you go to the museum, maybe you go to parks or things and just kind of learn the child, learn what educate. Maybe you go to the farmer's market, maybe you cook a bunch, enjoy different restaurants, walk to places more. Like you're just pulling yourself out of the system for a little while and looking at education and the way that your child and you, like the way your child learns, the way you learn, and the way you teach that child.
I want to give just an example of this. I think helps to flesh it out a little bit. So about a year and a half ago now, your dad had gotten surgery and he came to live with us after in his recovery for a couple of months. And it was right at the beginning when we normally would have started school. And just because of of dad being in the house and taking care of him and all this,
first trimester,
everything, it was like, okay, school's not going to happen in the normal way. And so we kind of decided we're going to be fine with that. We'll start it here in a month or two, when things settle down. And in the meantime, what we instead focused on is we kept the structure of family life. Kids do need structure. That's important. So we kept our normal schedule. Like we still got up at the same time, did our chores, had breakfast at the same time. But rather than having formal school time the way we normally would have done, or assigning the normal school workbooks and different things like that, for a few months, the kids just focus on, hey, every day, kids, you're gonna take. I think I had them doing 2 half-hour chunks where they were just reading, and then doing another half an hour chunk of free writing, so they could write whatever they wanted, and they could read whatever they wanted. It had to be chapter books. And I knew they could already do those things, and they could pick what to fill it with, but they were to do those every day. And we did that for a few months as we were, taking care of dad and everything. And like the amazing output of reading and writing from that time period was incredible. Like the reams and reams
novels
of stories
and poetry
and novels
and riddles and illustrations, and it was incredible.
It was a great example of, again, like like a general structure, but allowing the kids during this time to take a bit more of a lead. And okay, what are you interested in? What are you interested in reading about? What are you interested in writing and exploring about? And it's okay to take some time and to do that. And that actually allowed us to then come back into school with more of a sense of, with stronger readers and writers, but then also a better sense of what are they interested in? What can we capitalize on in helping move back into the formal schooling?
Yeah, that's a great example. Thanks. I actually totally forgot about that time period.
Yeah.
So curriculums. My advice, this is purely subjective advice, okay? Look for your desired curriculums at the library first and try them out, okay? So we mentioned Life of Fred a lot. That's available in your, there's 50 copies of this in the Ohio library system that you can have, learn how to use your library system. Right. And there's also, I mentioned this before, there's no shame in spending a bunch of money on your ideal Catholic curriculum and sending in your curriculum notification letter and telling the school board that this is what you're using. And then you realize on week 1 that it's absolutely unsustainable to use this thing. It's unworkable. Your child won't do it. You hate teaching it. You don't even understand what this page looks like or what I'm supposed to do first on this page. We've all been there.
You can throw it out and start
put it aside. It's
fine.
De-school, read, learn the child better, just pick a different curriculum.
Yeah. Or just put that aside and then just focus on a smaller number of subjects that you can really double down on and you really enjoy and the kids really enjoy.
Yeah.
Like that's okay too. A different and greater kind of fruit is going to come out of it.
Yeah. If your kids are super into science right now, like we do science together with the older kids. And we could, some days it's just great. And we could just keep pushing through like the next system, the next, chapter, whatever. And it's like, as long as everyone's having fun and enjoying themselves and you don't want to die, like, yeah, why not? We mentioned, again, we do Life of Fred for math, and this is something we do not do. And I stand by it. Gosh darn it. We do not do spelling.
Oh, yeah.
I dropped that after hearing that Charlotte Mason educational method does not do spelling. And I was like so ready to drop that because even the kids who love doing workbook stuff hated spelling. And so we dropped it in faith in Charlotte Mason, that her method was going to work out. And I have tested the one kid who has had no spelling ever, off and on, okay? And she is like a better speller than I could have possibly ever imagined. And that has come from reading and copy work.
Yeah, and let me contextualize it because I do want to emphasize that one of the absolute bedrock foundations of education for a child should be language. Like one of your huge educational goals should be for that child to be able to read and write and speak very, very well, very fluently and beautifully and proficiently. Language should be their life. So why not spelling? Well, the thing of spelling, especially if you speak English, is that English is a bastard language. Like, it just is. It's got the Germanic half, it's got the Romantic half. It's all put together, and all the rules are made up, and the points don't matter. It's just spelling in English is just pointless. And you can bang your head, and you can bang your child's head against a bunch of spelling rules and spelling workbooks and learning the vowel combinations, until they're blue in the face. And you know what? In the end, it's not going to matter. Because really, if they just read a lot and write a lot, they're going to pick that stuff up. You don't.
They really have an aptitude for learning and mimetic learning.
Yeah.
Audiobooks are phenomenal. Like, I think there are some years where the majority of our budget, not even budgeted stuff, but we have spent the most money for homeschooling on audiobooks, because you hear the language, you hear it spoken by someone who knows how to say it. You like it's an actor, like listening to Shakespeare being read to you. You learn so much. We love audiobooks. Yeah. You can get those through the library too.
Yeah, just double down on helping your child learn to read really well and really enjoyably, and then to be able to write. That writing is a very, very, very important skill. And then encourage conversation, encourage reading aloud, encourage, speaking well. The spelling will just come on its own. You don't need to make it a specific formal subject.
So again, this is just our opinion.
Our opinion.
Our opinion.
I'm telling you, save yourself a headache there.
Next, practical. It is not always wise to push through the bad days.
Oh, yeah.
All right. if you're, I remember actually our first formal homeschooling day, we had arbitrarily picked a date. It ended up being a date that you were out of town on work. And I was like, I'm still going to do it. We're going to make pancakes in the morning. This is Dominic's first day of formal schooling. We're going to do this. And it was like, it wasn't even 8:00 and I had yelled at the kids already and I was practically crying. And I was just like cooking this breakfast. And I was like, I hate this. This is the worst. I'm the worst. We shouldn't be doing this. Like, again, I'm the worst. I'm a failure. And then I was like, wait, there's no one who says we have to start today. I was like, we'll just start when JonMarc gets back home. And it was like, ding. And then everything went away and me and the kids still had a day. They still learned all day because they're kids and that's what they do. If send the kids outside, let them read to them if you can, if you're in the mental space where you can read to them. Have a foreign language video or audiobook ready if that's, what you want to do with their time, or just drop the school day altogether. It's a free day.
We talked in the first episode about our current snapshot of our schedule. And I spend an hour with the kids before I go to work, from 8 to 9. That's just how we have things set up. And there was one day a few months ago when I was, we just had a rough morning with chores and everybody was a little grumpy. And I had written down the previous day, like I was going to work, 20 minutes working more on our Latin and then get everybody doing their math homework and everything. And I was not feeling it. I was like, oh gosh. So I pivoted that day and I just grabbed out this new book. I don't have it with me, but it's a book by a priest on the virtue of prudence and the virtues. That I just started reading it, and it's good material, but it's light enough. The first chapter I thought that the kids could follow, and I'm just like, you know what? We're just going to read aloud today. Okay, you start, Dominic, and he read a paragraph, and we started going around the table, and I was just trying to fill the time with something that I was not going to be too much of a headache. And you know what? We ended up reading that whole chapter and the next one and having this great conversation about it. And by the end of it, we were all in a great mood. And like, it was just, and as you said, the point is if it's just not working that day, you have the freedom to be able to say, you know what? We're going to take a break from this today. We're going to do something different. Like you can do that. That's fine.
Yeah. And even sometimes the kid, especially when they're young, they ask for more education, but you can tell that they are not going to do well. Right. So I had Mina the other day and we were doing, this is our 5-year-old, and she just wanted to do school so bad, but she couldn't follow any of the instructions. We'd used up her ability to follow the instructions with the teddy bear math manipulatives. Okay. So she was just like, but no, I want to do more. And then we'd, try to follow directions and it would just be like, no, I'll just play with them like this. And we're like, okay, we're done. Right. We did like 3 minutes of this and we're done. And I can tell she's done, even though she's begging for more. And we're done, right? Mm-hmm. And that is a successful math day.
Right.
With a 5-year-old. And then some days they can go longer. So it's just learn your kids, learn when to stop, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't tell. This is a pro tip. We talked about this in Mom's group the other day.
I read this one in your notes. You're going to have to explain this one. Okay. I'm not sure if I can
Don't tell younger kids about field trips or play dates until you have successfully backed out of the driveway and are actually driving to your destination.
So why is this?
Because if you tell a kid that you're going to have some kind of a fun, so we're talking like 7 and under, okay? Depending on the maturity of the kid. Because if you tell a kid that they're going to have a play date with someone next week, not only will you never stop hearing about it, they will whip themselves up into all kinds of frenzies, like excitement, fear. What if I don't have this? What if I can't bring this? I need to bring this. I'm going to make them all kinds of gifts and presents, okay? And then inevitably the family gets sick and throws up and then we can't go to their house. I mean, it happens like 50% of the time, okay? Or if something comes up and we can't go, we start throwing up maybe. And then it's just like sobbing for the next several days and sometimes for the next several weeks that they didn't have this play date with this kid. So all the experienced moms at Catholic Mom Book Club the other day said, do not tell your kids you're going anywhere until you have backed up out of your driveway, not run over anything, and you're on your way to the destination.
See, I've been thinking about lately a seemingly opposite point, but maybe we can make them work together. And I think
maybe this is a mom versus a dad.
It might be a father-mother thing too. Like I've been thinking of my need to maybe this is reflective of the older kids, that I need to get better at actually planning it. I tend to live too much in the moment, and things are very busy. And so I don't get around to enough of the family activities and plans and vacations and things that we'd like to do for our family culture. And I've recognized the need to do that more specifically with regards to the older kids, because as they're getting older and they have more responsibilities and they have more chores and like you need to be giving them things to look ahead to.
Older
so
kids,
that work,
sure.
Makes sense in the moment, so that they have a sense that, hey, we're working as a family now because we want to do fun things later. Like we're working toward the weekend when we're going to go, or we're going to have that movie night, or we're going to do these things together. You have to make the game worth playing, right? So that they keep playing it. They
have to have a prize to keep their eye on.
Yeah. So that's, and maybe that is more about the older kids,
Yeah, because we want the kids to be motivated simply based on theoretical ideas. Like, we'll be happy as a family, or you'll get a good education and you'll be successful in your future. But that a lot of times is just not motivating enough, and it can feel like you're never getting anywhere. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So take either of our experiences with
a bit of both,
however you want to use them in your own life. Okay. So last practical before we get into the Q&A.
Yeah.
When your kids are young, your house will vacillate between clean and a disaster. That's just what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay. Because there's more of them than there are of you. All right. And your yard will as well. So pick your battles. Okay.
Yeah.
And practice having people over without cleaning so that you can learn to hug the cactus of your shame and get over it. Because that's really the only way it's going to happen. Yeah, you're going to feel ashamed, and then you're going to get over it.
In case no one's burst the bubble for you, cleanliness is not next to godliness.
That's not my Bible.
Myth. That's not real necessarily.
Yeah. And I mean, it feels
cleaning
really,
can be an act of virtue, but cleanliness is not of itself.
Yeah. And everybody feels better when there's not clutter. Yeah. I get it. Yeah. But there may just be a period of time when you just don't get that option on a regular basis. Okay. On a regular basis. So it just, what did Francis say? Francis Russell said, you can have home cooked meals, homeschool your kids, or have a clean house. You can have two of those things, but you can't have all three.
You only freely drop her name because you know she doesn't listen to this.
No, she would listen to our podcast. I think I said something the other day, like we were chatting about something, and I was like, we have X number of downloads every month. That's bizarre. And she's like, I'm not one of them. I was like, I know. Okay, so Q&A. Actually, oh, never mind. Q&A.
Okay.
Here they are. Are you ready? You haven't seen these questions, I don't think. Okay. How do you manage the little kids while schooling the big kids?
Okay. Well, we described this a little bit in our first episode. I don't think there's one right answer to this. It's going to be a combination of, again, knowing your children and yourself. Some kids have more or less capacity to sit together as a group and do group learning. And some adults have more or less capacity to command that kind of attention, right?
Yeah.
In our case, as it's working right now, I do some time together with the oldest three kids who are all 2 years apart. And they have differing temperaments and maturity levels, but I'm generally able to work on some things together with the three of them, with little kids playing elsewhere. And so again, the way we handle that is that, in the morning we kind of swap. Like I do some time with the older kids and you keep an eye on the younger kids, and then we swap. But I also would say that we rely a lot in our home and our family schooling, that there's just a lot of things that we do together as a family that over time have become part of our culture. And it just takes a lot of persistence. Again, some of our prayer routines are part of that example of that, where, it's been messy for a long time, but it's eventually sunk in that the older kids know what to do, and the middle kids follow suit, and the little kids are starting to get it.
Yeah. And the majority of the time when we pray, except for our quick morning offering or the things around the table. Like if we're going to do real prayer, we usually put the little kids away, or we do it after bedtime or something like that. Because, again, that's just a choice we made because we want the older kids to really develop a habit and a quiet prayer life. And so for some parts of that, the little kids just go away.
I think another point we've talked about is just like really emphasizing the reading early on as much as possible, and just hammering that home, getting that really strong, really confident. Because the more that you have older kids that can read very proficiently, the more that you can begin to give them more responsibility in their own education. In other words, like, okay, we have a workbook. Okay, I want you to read through this chapter and do the homework, and then we'll look at it together later. I don't have to be there over your shoulder at every moment because I know you can read really well and comprehend really well.
And some kids are better than that than others. Right, we have one kid who wants you to do every single thing with them. And she may not grow out of that for a long time. And then we have other kids who are totally self-proficient, but who are super good at lying and hiding about whether or not they've done things, just choosing not to do them. Yeah. So, I mean, like, we're always managing and watching and holding accountable. Okay. Another hack that has been working really well is that the younger kids will come out and interrupt us. They absolutely will. And my big kids will immediately get goofy with one another or leave the table, or if I have to go deal with the little kids. So what I've been using probably for the last half a year that has been working so good is telling the older kids to put their heads down.
Like just take a break.
Like, no, not take your right. Put your heads down on the table. Got it. Like at school. Okay. Yeah. And then I go deal with the other kids, and they're quieter. I mean, they don't get goofy. They know they're not supposed to get goofy. Okay. And it takes a couple times of practicing that with the goofiness, but it's like, that has been my pause button, and it has worked so well, which is probably why I learned it at school, because it worked well. And it's not a punishment, right? It's like, you're just putting your head down. Put your head down.
Just take a little cat nap.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
I haven't tried that. I'll try that.
I love it. It can be a punishment. Okay. For those who homeschool, when do you find personal time for yourself, not cleaning or cooking, but pursuing hobbies each day? Each is in big caps. When you have homeschooling littles who do not nap.
Well, I think another part of it is just right. I think it doesn't take the time investment that you necessarily think it does, especially when you're deschooling. So
what this person is asking is like, how do you find time to be without the kids, or at least not bothered by the kids, to pursue your own charism, your own hobby, your own thing?
What do you think?
Okay. So there's two ways to take this. Okay. Yeah. Number one way, nobody likes it. Get up early. Yeah. Get up earlier than the kids. Get an okay to wake clock so that the kids know when they can get out of their bed before they can read time, and just make it super strict upon implementing. Just don't even look at them. Don't hug them. Don't, just back in that room until the okay to wake clock goes off, and they'll get it. They'll get it quickly. But you have to get up early, because usually your brain is fried by the end of the night. But the second way that we can take this is that when you're having downtime, I always want to veg on the couch and do something mindless. Okay. But then any interruption becomes there's just never enough vegging that you can do to actually make you feel like you're done vegging, you're done resting. You can get up now and go about the day. I have to do something that makes me alive. Yeah. Okay. So I have to pursue the thing that makes me alive. Okay. And this might come after your spouse gets home. I'm a raging extrovert, but I can fool myself. So I need to get out and be with other people and have awesome conversations and laugh and just enjoy being out. And when I do that, I'm able to come back to the day refreshed and excited. Maybe for you, that's writing. Okay. So you'd have to find a time if the kids don't nap. I guess it would be before, or work out with your husband. What day of the week am I doing this? Am I getting out? We have neighbors who are totally capable of stepping over and being in the house with my kids, you know? So, and I don't mean like babysitting them forever. I mean, like I can step into a back room and think about things or do the thing that enlivens me and brings me joy and fills me up so that I'm ready to step back into the day. Jennifer Fulwiler is awesome at talking about this. She's got this book called One Beautiful Dream, where she talks about how she wrote her first book when she had in the space of like having 6 kids in 8 years. And what that looks like. And her advice is beautiful. And she's a comedian, so it's like a total page turner. I was laughing the first time I read it. So yeah, what do you think about that?
One of the things that comes to my mind, and this is something that I think we've both learned and been getting better at, is just sometimes when we think of that question, we want an easy answer to that question that can happen and be implemented in isolation from our spouse and our kids. In other words, like, I need to just be able to like turn a key and make this happen. And it's not going to be like that. It's going to take some creativity and working creatively with your spouse. You know, like a few years ago, I can't remember, for some reason I was committed to doing evening prayer every day, or I was like, for like a month, I was trying to like get better at doing both morning and evening prayer. And there were some days I would do it at the end of work and some days I didn't have it done. And I remember one day I was like, it just occurred to me like, oh, wait a minute. Why I can ask Teresa, hey, can I take 10 minutes and go pray in the bedroom? And I remember in that moment, I was like, for years, there's a part of me that has wanted to do more things, but didn't want to have to communicate and problem solve creatively with you. Like I wanted to stay insulated and kind of like drive my own stuff and just have it. But to have to say, okay, hey, can you, like we're getting a lot better at that now, where we've talked through more aspects of our schedule and we've gotten creative with saying, okay, here, can you play with the kids for a little bit, and so I can go off and do this thing, and then we'll swap or whatever. And it seems like such an obvious thing, but I think sometimes the reason we can't figure these things out is because we want to be able to solve them on our own, and we need to solve them as a team. And I think you brought up Jennifer Fulwiler. One of the things that kind of comes out in her books is recognizing that you need to even bring your kids into that, especially the older kids, after a while as your family develops it, saying that, hey, like this is our family mission. This is the vision for our family, or this is what, hey, you have things you want to do. I have things that I want to do that make me, and we have to help each other in this. So let's be strategic in these ways to help each other. It's going to take some creativity, but it has to be done as a team. That's one thing. The other thing that I would just say too is that, like, again, as you said, the stuff that you pursue, hobbies, types of things, you need to be realistic with those and evaluate those. I mean, I think you do want to begin to do things that over time some of them can be done with the family, right? Like sometimes maybe we're picking things that are unrealistic or unnecessarily isolating, rather than things that can bring us together. And again, I'm getting really into board games. I just love playing them. Can't do those with little kids and their babies. But now I'm getting to the point where I have older kids who love to play these, and I can now pursue and do these different hobbies because I've kind of gone through the process on working on being able to do them with their kids. So
yeah. And if we're talking, so she mentioned hobbies, but if we're talking like you're in this mode with littles where you can't get away and you're getting overwhelmed and overstressed. Okay. Adam Lane Smith was on and I asked him this question. I'm like, okay, you want me to work out or push myself to physical extreme when I feel like I'm getting angry or I'm losing control or having a panic attack or something like that. But I have kids who will die if I go take 20 minutes, that could actually die if I go take 20 minutes and run outside or run on the treadmill or whatever.
Right.
And his advice was, well, then turn on your favorite music and have a dance party with the kids until you're exhausted. Right. And so it's the same as like exercise, only it's not dangerous for my children. Right. Yeah. So, and I spent years being like, I just need 5 minutes. I can't even get 5 minutes without being interrupted. I just need 5 minutes to be able to calm down. And I was always whipping myself up into these panic attack frenzies when I couldn't get isolation, because you just can't. You can't get isolation when you have little children who could die, right? So the dance party thing is a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just one other quick thing is just like, again, sometimes the barrier is just that you need to break through and begin to have harder conversations with your spouse, more creative conversations about what you need, what I need, what you want, what I want, and how can we help each other. We've gotten a lot better this past month. Like every Tuesday night, you've been going out for a few hours, going to my office or someplace to just work and decompress and do some work on your computer and do some writing. And same thing on Saturday morning. That's when you have your book club, but you also spend extra time out. And it's just because we looked at the schedule. I kind of blocked out the week and recognized, hey, why don't we just make these 2 blocks of time every week, just unschedulable time on the calendar, and even if you don't have something scheduled, you just go out and take the time for yourself. And
you do that at 7 a.m. every morning for me too. You take over breakfast like managing all of the children. And I work out, because we were in a situation where you would get to go to the gym, you would get prayer time, but just because I'm the mother, like I would just never get away. It would never happen. Like we could either have breakfast, have dinner prepared for later in the day, or like I could exercise. Yeah. Or like we were making a lot of and/ors with like necessary things, or like either/ors with necessary things. And eventually you were just like, why don't I just take over breakfast and you spend that 7 to 8 hour doing whatever. Like we want you to exercise. We know you need it, and so you spend your time doing what you think you need to do to exercise, to stretch, to build strength, whatever, your garden, plan your day, be outside,
things that you wanted to do.
Get the stuff done. And I will just take, you just tap out and I'll tap in during that time. Yeah. And that's.
And I think it's just a super common thing with couples. I think it's a really common thing where you have goodwill, but you're both just trying to like figure out marriage and family life in your own track, right? And when it's not working, it's like you double down on, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do things and schedule things better so I can fix things. When really, if you just look across the aisle and begin to troubleshoot it with each other, it may involve some initial, getting out of baggage and pent up stuff. But like once you can begin having that conversation, there's a lot more creative solutions, I think, than we're aware of.
Yeah. And if you're afraid of the fight, you probably should have the fight.
Get it done. Get it out there.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, do you follow a schedule for your day?
I think we already answered that one pretty well.
Or do you do more than a rhythm? So yeah, check out our first episode, Homeschooling 1 episode, part 1, I don't know, where we go through our day. So the answer to that is like, yes and no.
But I think one comment I'd make about that is that we've done a lot of throwing stuff at the wall over the years to see what sticks, and letting some things go and keeping other things, it's just, that's something that's a responsibility of yours to take on. Like I have to be the creative problem solver, culture builder here in my home, along with my spouse. But once you begin doing it, you also recognize it's a lot of fun, and no one can actually, no influencer out there with an ebook or a PDF can actually give you the end all be all schedule. You have to go through the messy process of trying and experimenting. And eventually things do sink in. You find the traditions, the rhythms, the routines that work for you. But it's always a work in progress too.
Habit stacking is a great idea. Like find the habit that you already have in the day and think about what would logically flow there.
Yeah, build out from there. Yeah. Use it as an anchor.
Yeah, we have breakfast every day and we've built a little like liturgy out of our breakfast. Yeah. So it's one of the ways we pray during the day. And we have a whole episode on what we do at breakfast too. Okay, this is for you. What do you do when a child does not want to cooperate with school? We've answered that a little bit. Not just for one day, but basically every day. So maybe we're talking about a bad attitude, or they've already decided, maybe. I mean, I'm putting words in her mouth. Yeah. Decided that school is not something they're doing. And they're not cooperating with mom.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a few ideas. Like number one, we talked a little bit in the last episode about getting to know your child and getting to know what they're excited about and trying to help them take the next step in virtue. And so part of that is, getting to know what's the basis of that mental block? What's the basis of, a lot of, like with some of my kids, it's been just fear. Like, and I didn't sort of figure that out till some troubleshooting and some experimenting and, talking and letting out strong emotions, from the kid. That is they're just like afraid that they're going to mess it up or something like that.
And there's not always, your kid may not always be able to tell you that.
Right.
Either they might not want to let it out, or they just might not know how to name that. So that's why, again, we've talked a lot about this, but like the taking a break from schooling and doing something more out of the box, like going to museums, letting them pick where you're going to go. Because when that happens, they might let down a little more. And then you can start to see, or they might even tell you, or you might be able to be like, hey, you love this thing that you just did here. That was the same thing we did in the workbook the other day, or that's similar to what we did in the math. Oh, okay. What's different? Like, I love this. This is great. I'd take you here, once a week if you wanted. We can get a membership here. What makes this different? It might just take getting them out of the scenario and knowing that you're just starting a fresh conversation with them in like away from the kitchen table, away from wherever you're homeschooling. You're in a different scenario, and they just might feel different and a little more like they can let it out, or that they can put words to it finally. Right. So I'm such a huge fan of stepping away from school and like letting that kid pick the next field trip or pick the next outing. Yeah. Or even just getting alone time with that kid, even if it's just like ice cream or. Yeah,
you can always step back and focus on a more fundamental. Like if you kind of see things in your life and your kids' lives as these stacked blocks, like always a more fundamental level. It's just like your relationships as a family. And if those aren't in order, if those are in need of repair, well, that's going to trickle upward to other things. Sometimes, a lot of times I find, right, when the kids aren't motivated to cooperate and participate in the family life, well, part of it sometimes that they just need more like time and attention in a different way that they're not getting. And so they don't feel motivated to play this game of life as a family because, they've kind of lost sight of what we're working towards, or maybe you're not.
Or they don't care about the family because it's not at the moment, it's not like giving them what they need, and that sounds like a bigger thing than it is. Like that's an easy thing to fix, right? If a kid feels like they hate the family, it's probably a concrete thing that you can probably address. Like, we used to spend time after the kids went to bed together watching Minecraft videos, and now we don't do that anymore. Oh, okay. Do we need to put on the calendar that we're going to, like watch, you know what I mean? Like they feel big, but they're probably really easy fixes.
Right. It's like, again, we talked about before the love languages book, and the main takeaway from that book is just recognizing that, hey, the way that you think to express love may not always be the ways that others best receive it. And so sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, wait, what are the things, and you might have to ask this, your spouse or your child, when do you really feel loved? Like when do you really feel loved and appreciated? Like what are those times? And it may just be something different than you had stuck in your head. You say, oh gosh, I got to reinforce those areas.
Yeah. Or you could warm or safe or something depending on the kid's age. Like when do you feel like you're just happy and safe and warm? Because some other kids may not know what it feels like to feel loved.
Recognize, since we're talking about homeschooling here, that there's no teacher out there that's going to have the perfect solution to this either. Just because your kid's in the school system and they're feeling like, because they're in school, this issue of not being motivated to do school, it's not going to suddenly be fixed just because they're in a big giant classroom of kids with a teacher who's got to teach them all. It's going to be an issue either way. You have the advantage as a parent and a home educator that you have the freedom to pause the lesson or even pause the subject and step back, work on the relationship, maybe discover what's missing, what's lacking. You have an advantage there. That's not, there you go.
Okay. This one's for you too. Last one. What is dad's role in homeschooling?
Dad's role, in terms of the actual practicalities of teaching or working through a workbook or explaining that stuff, I mean, that's going to look different in every family. And I think there's some moms out there who are like, just by their temperament or their ability, they're just able to command a crowd and they can do a lot more of that. We've found ways that we've kind of divided up that labor, and there's some things that I like to do, you like to do, and we're still tinkering with that. So that may look a little bit different, and it's going to be dependent on your relationship, your temperament, your creative solutions with your spouse. I'd say the more important role of the dad is that you are the head of the family. You are the king and the culture builder of the family. Like it is your responsibility to be setting up a family life that is, as I said earlier, a game that's worth playing. Building with your spouse a culture, a rhythm of life, setting a vision for where the family's going. That's motivated and exciting. You have to make sure that that you're teaching your children and helping them to participate in the work, but also that work is oriented towards the Sabbath day. We're a Sabbath people as Christians, as Catholics. We are not meant for the work. We do the work, but we're meant for the Sabbath, for relationship, for leisure, for worship, for love, for connection. And so you have to lead your family in such a way that balance is right, that we're working together as a family, but we're always working towards the Sabbath day, both the actual day of the week, but also, just in terms of the structure of life, towards the relationship, towards the connection, towards worship of God, towards love, towards all of that. And so you have a particular role, not always in necessarily implementing all of that, but certainly taking the initiative in starting that conversation, working on it with your wife, being the lead cheerleader and keeping the family motivated and moving that direction. I think that dad, you have a role as this kingly role, this prophetic role in your family, to be the one who's always initiating that and buoying it up. So that's what I'd say about that. What do you think?
Yeah. Your wife certainly has flaws, but she probably is always caring and trying and worried and feeling like she may fail. So you are phenomenal in every aspect that I am a wife and a mother and a woman. Like, you're phenomenal at supporting that and always making me feel like, I don't want to say supporting like you're this, like there's a really negative connotation in our culture right now of men that just like do whatever their wife tell them.
Right.
And that's not what I'm saying. Right. What I'm saying is that you see my value and my dignity and what I am only capable of. Mm-hmm. I am only capable in this two-person relationship of gestating children, of nursing children, of being the mother to the children. Right. We have chosen for me to stay home, and that has certain responsibilities. And you are so excellent at supporting all of those roles, never coming home and being like, what did you do all day? And we just did an episode about this. Again, in just the first episode of this new season, if you will, the leadership and managing up episode. Oh yeah. That's the role of a leader in whatever context they're in. The leader exercises whatever power they have for the good of others to set them up for success. And so that's as much true. And we were talking about, flipping that on its head a little bit, talking about how that's even true for if you're lower in an organization, how you're doing that both above and below you. But that's true if you're at the top of an organization, if you're the king of a country, if you're the Pope of the Catholic Church, you are the servant of the servants of God. The king, if he's being a good king, his goal is for all of his citizens to flourish. And so if the husband has a particular kingly role as the head of the family, but that's a role of laying down his life in service. He is to lay down his life if necessary and as necessary so that his wife flourishes, so that his children flourish. That's his role, is this Christly kingly role of laying it all down to help them succeed. And that's, so it's never, you're never in a position of leadership or authority or power for yourself. And it's the modern world that makes us always think of hierarchy and power in those terms. No. As just reaping benefits. I'm only reaping benefits. No, it's always for others. And so a husband is a man for his wife, for his children. And so, back to the original question here, like, what's dad's role? Well, you need to be a good head of your family, initiating, building family culture, and then creatively working with your wife to figure out, okay, how do we practically implement this? What are the ways that I should, that
that we should both be practically involved in the actual homeschooling. Well, I've got no voice left, so the episode's over. So
we did it. Episode 3, homeschooling. Yes. We said a lot of things.
A lot of things. So we'd like you to say some additional things. So if you go to elevateordinary.com, you can find the past episodes of this little mini series. You can find past archives of the show. You can also find how to contact us. We'd love to hear again from you, your comments, your input. You can always do future episodes, revisit this topic, because again, this is not a definitive end-all, be-all homeschooling 101. This is our experience, our conversation. We're inviting you into it. We'd love to hear from you. And we hope that, again, we can help encourage you to be having these conversations, this thought process in your life, because ultimately you have to be the decision maker, the thinker, the creative problem solver in your marriage and your family. And that's God's dignified, creative call that he's made to you. And so you got to do it. So go do it. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode of Elevate Ordinary. We'll be back again soon. God bless you. See you then.